This is TWiT.
I have a lot of questions and concerns in some of the decisions I've seen come out over the last 6 months, but I'm not in the science trenches watching it all unfurl, and I was a bit
thank
alarmed.
God for NASA that we were both excluded from that.
That's right. Well, I mean, Jim was talking about the math earlier, and I almost tipped my hat to your successful bout with differential equations, the bane to Rod and I.
Well, and that he liked it. He said he liked it.
I never said that. I never said that.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it was fun.
So I've been very confused because over the last 6 months we have seen budget zero outs for things like Chandra X-ray Space Telescope. You see the Viper cancellation. You see a forced delay for the Escapade mission from October of the Escapade Mars mission. NASA sending 2 missions to Mars on Blue Origin's first New Glenn rocket, because they're I guess not confident that rocket's going to be ready. So then they slip to the end of that window in spring of 2025, which feels like pushing it. And you've got this ripple of, if I'm a layperson, it just seems like they're choosing not to do the science, choosing not to do it. The Chandra one hurts in particular because it brings back memories of initial attempts to kind of close down Spirit and Opportunity when they were still working fine. They weren't stuck or anything. Right. And that attempt, which was an attempt just to save money for other projects and move them around at the expense of science. We saw that again with New Horizons, right, Rod? We talked about that on the show, where they were going to just do that. And it just seems to me that in the last 6 to 8 months, we have seen a trend that could be really worrying on the financial side of things. And I'm wondering if the people that are doing the science are concerned, or if it's just like an appearance issue, or maybe I'm just like a panicky person. Yeah. I mean, I'm not calm at all, Jim. So
you could say that again.
Chill out a little bit. All right. So yes, very concerned. And one of my hats with the Planetary Society, we express our concerns. We write, if you guys know Casey Dreyer, and what he writes about is very frank and honest, and we're very concerned. The community is very concerned about the future of science within NASA. And I think what you're seeing, I think it's actually personally quite simple, right? It's good people dealing with a very difficult problem, and that is a shrinking budget. Mm-hmm. And within that environment, you have to make priorities. And in some cases, priorities have been made through documents like the Decadal Survey. In other cases, there are programs and missions that weren't in the Decadal, that weren't imagined in the last Decadal, which is sort of we're coming to the end of here. And so they don't know what the priority is, and there's not enough time because decisions have to be made because Congress says, give us your budget. And so decisions are made high up in the NASA administration and in a way that maybe not effectively communicated as it should be with stakeholders. And I think it's good people with a difficult problem of a shrinking budget and somewhat uncertain priorities. One priority that is very clear, at least with the current leadership in NASA, is that Artemis is the top priority. Yeah. And Artemis is mostly not science, right? The money that goes into Artemis is rockets and hardware and life support and lander. It's a lot of technical. It's a difficult problem getting people to the moon, bringing them back, making them safe. And by the way, we want to try to do some science there, which is where Viper comes in. But it's just not. Science within Artemis doesn't have the priority that science within the science division of NASA has, right? And so I think there's where policy comes into play. There's where, if science were truly regarded as critical to the success of Artemis or the success of Moon to Mars, then the human program would play a bigger role in supporting the robotic support for the human program. But as Rod and I have talked about in the past, there's kind of this wall, this bureaucratic wall between the human part of NASA exploration and the science robotic part of NASA exploration. And so I think, decisions have to be made in a realm of a shrinking budget where priorities are not maximized for science. I think it's good people in a tough situation making those decisions.
If only we could get some of that black budget from Space Force to roll over to science, but that's a silly thought. You talked a little bit about the entry of commercial players into non-human space flight, which is, landers and rovers have often been built by by commercial contractors working for NASA. But now with fixed price and all that kind of thing, it's a whole different world. We've talked about that a lot. But, you were mentioning both MSR and possibly Viper going out to different bids in the commercial realm. And yet, in terms of commercial non-human space flight, so pulling SpaceX out of the equation, we haven't seen much success. So what kind of milestones do we have to pass before, and I'm asking this as a layperson, obviously, from the outside, the peanut gallery, when do I trust these guys to be able to do something like land on the moon, for instance?
Yeah, well, look, we haven't seen much complete success, right? But don't forget, how many times did it take NASA with the full backing of the federal government to hit the moon? Not to land on it, but just to hit the moon with the Ranger program. Was it Ranger 8, 9, right? That they even hit the moon, right? And so now you've got these smaller companies, many of them startups, working on shoestring budgets compared to what the government had when they were trying to solve these problems. And not only did the initial ones, they could hit the moon, but they almost landed right. And, the Japanese one kind of got it on its side, but they did a bunch of work science anyway. The IM one landed on its side, but okay, but it was a soft landing, right? And that's for a small company on a low budget in a high risk program, I think there's plenty of successes to point to. Have any of them reached full mission success yet? No. What does it take to meet full mission success? All of the mission assurance, all the redundancy, all that stuff that NASA does, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars it takes to do that. So NASA has accepted more risk because the cost is lower, more opportunities. So we've got a couple more of them coming up late this year, early next year, a few more attempts. We saw SpaceX didn't launch their first Falcon 9 successfully, right? It took them a while. Now it's like routine. We don't even notice them anymore, right? And so I think the more of these that the commercial world gets under their belts, the better they get at launch and landing and operations. I have confidence in the program, and I hope that the key stakeholders, the public, members of Congress, have the patience to realize this is hard. The risk is higher, but we've got a lot of opportunities here, and they're going to learn. In the meantime, that money is not being sent up in bags and blown up in space. Right? The money is being spent here on Earth in companies and universities and labs. It's people. Most of the money is people, right? And it's smart people. It's people who push the limits of technology and the frontier of science and exploration, and it's happening, here in America. So I think those are all good aspects of this. So maybe I'm not as pessimistic as you, Rod.
So, that's the answer we were hoping to hear. And by the way, everybody, that was completely unprompted other than me asking the question. So this is straight from him, and we got to make sure to get that in social media. Okay, Tarek, go for your last one.
I was going to say, I think that Jim just said that every dollar spent on in space is spent on Earth right there. Right? Is what he said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip, be sure to check out This Week in Space. You can find us on your favorite podcast app or see the link in the description below. See you there.